Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, Jon Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Thank you, Steve Henderson. We've gotten past championship week, and now it's time to move on to bowl games and the Final Four. And leading off the College Football X, he's a pretty good leadoff hitter, Chris Mooningham from 680 The Fan, who's busy also doing high school football. You finally come up for air, at least for a day.
Yeah, for a day. Exactly right. One of my busy times of the year, John. Always a pleasure to be with you, and I'll be slammed over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, some college football talk. I'll be doing some guest hosting. We, of course, will. I work for 680 here in Atlanta with the College Football Voice of the South, so we'll have all the pertinent bowl games. Most of the bowl games will be live on our airwaves. We'll have college football playoffs, the Peach Bowl, and some little high school football too.
We've got our Final Four set in the college football playoff. And when we started off the season back in August, and back then we really didn't know if the Big Ten was going to play, but we kind of figured that it didn't matter if Ohio State would probably be there. And, of course, at least three teams we expected to be there are there, Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. And, of course, you got the legacy in Notre Dame, who just hung on into that 4 spot after being blown out by Clemson in the ACC championship game. Your feelings about these 4 teams being in the college football playoff?
Well, I think obviously the conversation is short when it comes to Alabama and Clemson. Once again, they're the cream of the crop. They'll be the favorites, obviously, to win their 2 respective ball games. Alabama's on another wild, dominant Alabama-like role. I think Clemson is showing who they really are now that they've gotten a few guys back, of course, with Trevor Lawrence back, most importantly. I don't mind at all that Notre Dame is in. I think that's the right move. I think the thing is, and the committee talks about this all the time, they group these teams. They put them in groupings. It was easy to put Alabama and Clemson in, and I think they probably then had a grouping of, as we would suspect, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and probably, frankly, that's maybe about it. Well, obviously that's not it, but Oklahoma was in that discussion, obviously, as well, as they ended up where they did. But I think that Notre Dame gets in, and to me, that's not a big surprise. We talked about this. We set this up. In fact, you and I, we were on the same page. We believed that this was going to happen, that Clemson was going to beat Notre Dame, and still the Fighting Irish, because of their body of work, would make the college football playoff. And it's right. I think it's correct, and I don't think there's any real debating it. With the Ohio State thing, I think that's where the real conversation begins, is Ohio State with 6 wins, a 6-0 mark in the games that they did play, with a conference championship, such as it is, against a solid Northwestern club. Are they better? And being the most talented team on paper of the teams that were in the running, are they truly a better selection than Texas A&M and Oklahoma? And I think in the end, unfortunately, that is the right pick. The truth of the matter is, John, and I think that in a way the College Football Playoff Committee missed the mark on this, because I think they were afraid of second guessing. I don't think it would have been uncouth for them to say, look, some pieces of this analysis that we have to do is a bit of a guessing game because of the lack of games for Ohio State. I think they wanted to stay away from that. And if anyone from the committee has come out and said that, and I missed it, then I'll beg your pardon. But I don't think they have, and I think that's purposeful. Ohio State, I think, in the end, deserves to be in the playoff. I would have been tempted to put them at number 4 because of the lack of games. It's unfortunate for Oklahoma because they may be the best team left out that's playing the best, if it's not Texas A&M, who is also a far better team than people realize.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that point. Oklahoma's playing their best football now at the end of the year, which is what you want to do. And Texas A&M, their defense is fantastic. Their offense is kind of hit or miss. But again, they're a solid ball club. But when I look at this Final Four, what I see are 4 programs that are legacy programs in college football. The Golden Helmets, Alabama, anytime Alabama.
The Modern Dynasty in Clemson.
The Modern Dynasty in Clemson, and of course the old school Big Ten in Ohio State with the Buckeyes on the helmets. I mean, you've got the 4 most recognizable program programs in college football history. And, to me, being an old school guy, that Notre Dame, Alabama, that resonates. So what I see here are teams that have the best talent, get the best high school talent, and are legacy programs, and are really programs that, let's face it, you got to have eyeballs to watch this on TV. That's why ESPN invests so much money into the college football playoff, and they've got the 4 legacy program teams with the best talent going for a national championship.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. You better get used to it, because that's the way it's going to be just about every year. That's my I don't want to be Mr. Negative and Mr. Doomsday, because I am like you. I am enthralled by the matchups as well. I think that Alabama's going to beat Notre Dame by 20 points. I really do, and I think
it'll be very similar to the
Clemson.
The second Clemson game will be very similar to that game.
Yeah, and I think Clemson's going to beat Ohio State by 14, maybe 16, and then you'll get Alabama Clemson 4 or 5. Now I've lost track. Maybe that's a bad. Well, maybe that's a bad sign too.
Remember, they played on a semifinal.
That's right. That's exactly right. Look, the thing is, it's like anything, and anybody who listens to your podcast weekly has heard me go into this soliloquy, for lack of a better phrase, about my belief of the college football playoff. I'll spare you all that monologue this week. I'm just afraid that as we keep moving along, that the college football playoff is, again, going to be the bluest of blue bloods, which more times than not still fits the bill, because those teams are going to be the most talented teams. So, again, I'm not trying to be overly negative or Mr. Doomsday.
No.
There are, like there was in the BCS era and like there was in the AP era and the coaches poll era, the UPI and all that, there are goods and there are bads. There are positives and there are negatives. And we can pick this thing apart. But in the end, once again this year, I think the committee got it right.
Well, I agree with you. I think they did get it right. And I think the games will be compelling. Clemson and Ohio State, look, when I look at that game, obviously Trevor Lawrence is NFL ready. I mean, what he did against Notre Dame, they had not seen that with DJU. And there is a difference between DJU and Trevor Lawrence. We all know that.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame saw it firsthand. And Ohio State is a mystery to me, because who have they played? And they've only played 6 games. Northwestern played them really well. And that's probably their toughest game. And people who listen to this podcast know how I feel about Pat Fitzgerald and what he's done there at Northwestern. I think he's fantastic. So I agree with you that Clemson should win this game by a couple of touchdowns over Ohio State. And then Alabama and Notre Dame, I totally agree with you. It's going to be very similar to that ACC championship game. Alabama's, because Mac Jones, to me, is just as good as Trevor Lawrence right now. And he's got nice talent around him, as we all know. So we get another Alabama-Clemson game. And you know what? To me, it's Lakers-Celtics from the 80s. It's the same thing. They meet every year for the championship, and those were classic ball games. If you're an NBA fan, I know you're an NBA fan, Chris. To me, it's Lakers-Celtics of the 80s.
Just really quick, still every once in a while, I'll go onto YouTube and I'll type in, Game 6, 1985, Game 6, 1987. Just to watch those ball games.
Oh, the fight between Kurt Rambis and Michael Ray Richardson's enough in game, I think, 4 of the 84 finals is enough to want to get back into that era. But that's what Alabama and Clemson is to me. It's Lakers-Celtics of the 80s. And that was pretty good and really carried the league for years. And because you had the best players. You had Magic versus Bird, and you had a great core of role players that some were stars themselves, like Worthy and Chief and all those guys. And that's kind of what you got with Alabama Clemson, except the cast of characters changes every 2 or 3 years because obviously of eligibility.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the rating number for the semifinals compared to the final. I think that for me personally, I work in the business, so I'll have to watch every minute of all three ball games. But
you and me both.
I say I have to. Like it's such a drone and such a trolling job. Oh, I'll have to watch every minute. But that you all know what I mean. You all know what I mean.
Yeah, and you'll have an adult beverage and a pizza to go with it.
Right. I'm far more intrigued by the championship game or the potential of Alabama-Clemson than I am the semifinal. Again, some of you out there listening will say that's a good thing. Some of you out there will say that that's a bad thing. That's another discussion, I suppose, for another day. It's like the bowl talk. How many bowl games are you really fired up about anymore? That's a whole other discussion. But the potential of Alabama-Clemson, I'm very much looking forward to.
Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fans joining me as we're talking college football. We've beat down the college football playoff. Now let's talk about a few other things going on in college football. And we're lucky to have a season. Let's face it. And we're lucky to be able to see it come to a conclusion, whether it's a bowl game or a championship. And what I'm gratified about is the feel-good stories that have come out of college football this year. And thank God there's a lot of them to talk about. It's easy to talk about Coastal Carolina and the great season they had in Myrtle Beach this year. But I've got to lump that into the Sun Belt because I think the Sun Belt Conference took advantage of the fact that they got some national exposure, especially that first week of the season when they went 3-0 against the Big 12. And they were able to maintain that excellence with Louisiana and with Coastal and some of the other teams in that league. I think that was a huge feel-good story if you're looking for one in the group of five.
Yeah, sure. I love that conversation, the Sun Belt. Obviously, I'm down here in the Deep South, and Georgia State had a fine season. A season where some people were questioning what their year would be. Georgia Southern was down a little bit, but App State was tremendously good this year. Probably a little bit better team than I think some people realize. That was an 8-win club, I think App was. And then, of course, the Raging Cajuns. Let's not forget about them at 9-1. Louisville, Louisiana was 9-1, weren't they? Yeah, they did finish 9-1, and I think they finished in the top 20 of the AP poll. I would also, too. I think we have to make sure we talk about going outside of that region too, and parlay this into the national talk as well. Let's also make sure that we remember and never forget, like it's a war. Never forget Indiana. Never forget Iowa State.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cincinnati was an amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget about the resurgence of North Carolina yet again this year. The Tar Heels, Northwestern. Teams like that, and my gosh, let's not forget about BYU as well. Unfortunately, a loss late may take some of the steam off that. But those were the stories that were just as much dominating the talk of this college football season after we settled in from COVID, after we were settled in with the Big Ten talk, and of course, aside from Clemson and Notre Dame and Alabama, also those 6 or 7 teams that we just mentioned were really the storylines of this season.
And not to forget San Jose State finishing undefeated and winning the Mountain West over Boise State with Nick Starkel as their quarterback. I just wish he would have done that with Arkansas last year. But he found a home in San Jose, and they're carrying a conference championship trophy back to Northern California, and they haven't been able to go home in a month or so because of the COVID restrictions, especially in Marin County where they can't even play a game or a practice, and they've been stuck as nomads and playing home games in Vegas. I mean, that's a great story.
Yeah, then how about if you're Oregon? You know, I know you got to the championship game the way you got to the championship game, and so that is what it is. But you're going to get to hang a banner now, and the kids are going to get a ring, and the community is going to be able to say, if the Pac-12 championship means anything to people the way that it used to, and my soapbox on that with the way the modern day fan is talking about conference championships. But for the folks that do care about such things still, look, you want a Pac-12 championship this year if you're Oregon.
Yeah, and you get to, as you said, hang a banner and get a ring, and Yeah, it's if anything says anything about 2020, Oregon winning the Pac-12 after finishing second in their division. I mean, that to me is 2020 in a nutshell, college football. But you bring up Indiana, and what a great story. Tom Allen he's one of those coaches that players just absolutely love. That video after they defeated Penn State in week 1, where he jumped into the mosh pit, to me just told me everything about him and his relationship with his players. We learned about Michael Penix Jr. Fortunately, he tears his ACL, but Indiana really didn't miss a beat when the second string got in there. And what a great story, that revival of football in Indiana. We think of basketball when we think of the Hoosiers.
What sort of ball game will it be for them against Ole Miss? For those who don't know, they're playing Ole Miss in the Outback Bowl. That'll be really interesting. I mean, that's a really interesting affair because, Ole Miss, a lot of people may not realize, by the way, just set a record for offense in the SEC. But they also set a record for defensive ineptitude in the SEC as well. So if Indiana is ready offensively with the new quarterback and with some other changes, if they're ready to play in that Outback Bowl game offensively, man, that could be a whale of a ball game. And those are the type of ball games that old school guys like you and I find interesting. For a modern day fan, for a kid at 20, 22, 24, they may not care as much as guys like you and I will. But for the older set out there, you hear Ole Miss and Indiana, and you say, wow, Ole Miss and Indiana. Now that's a matchup that I've never seen before. So that could be an interesting ball game.
We're wrapping things up with Chris Mooningham from 680 The Fan. We went over the Final Four, the college football playoff. New Year's 6 bowl games have been set. And actually, when you look at the matchups, they're not that bad since you brought up Indiana and Ole Miss. Texas A&M and North Carolina in the Orange Bowl. That's a game I would enjoy. I'd like to see Mike Elko's defense go up against Mac Brown's offense.
Yeah, that'll be a very interesting matchup, and I think it'll be another opportunity for North Carolina because they've been fighting for respect all year long to show now you're taking on an SEC team, a hot niche Texas A&M team that a lot of people liked for their opportunity to potentially finish 5th in not making the college football playoff, but maybe to be 5th. In that pecking order. I'll tell you another one just really quick is down in my neck of the woods here when Cincinnati takes on Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Similar storylines. Is Cincinnati ready now to truly take on an SEC team where Alabama, some of you may have watched the coverage over on the Worldwide Leader, and Kirk Herbstreit said one of the teams that I would not want to play right now if I was a head coach is the Georgia Bulldogs because that offense is now really starting to hum. They're also starting to look better in the run game. Their defense, which at times has been a little back and forth, tackle and hide this year, seems to feel very good about where they're at. Jordan Davis will be back. Richard LeCount will be back, and LeCount's going to be, an NFL player come next year. So I think the Georgia-Cincinnati game is one game of about 4, maybe 5 that really stick out to me in a major, major way. To go along with just really quick, the Cotton Bowl Classic with Oklahoma and Florida. That's what I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Cincinnati's defense because Luke Fickell earned his wings as a defensive coordinator.
Right.
And he's done some really good work with that Cincinnati defense against that much improved Georgia offense. And you know as well as I do, there are some really good athletes and really good skill guys on that Georgia team. And I feel the same way about Oklahoma and Florida. I mean, those are two teams, Oklahoma, that, their season didn't start that great because they were still trying to figure things out. But now they've figured things out, and they should be a college football playoff contender right now. And Florida is just maybe just one tick down from that. And they get a chance to prove themselves in Arlington on December 30th. And, of course, you got Oregon and Iowa State at the Fiesta Bowl. And Iowa State, to me, is a tough, grinding team, and Oregon's becoming that way with Marco Cristobal. That has a potential to be a 14-10 type of game in Glendale.
Well, think about if we did have, let's say we had an 18 playoff. Again, I'm not going to get on that soapbox, but let's just say we did. Who would you have as a favorite between Oklahoma, the number 6 seed, and Ohio State, the number 3? I got to tell you, I think that's a pick 'em ball game, John.
I like
think that's
Oklahoma.
a pick 'em ball game. See, and you like Oklahoma. I would put it as a pick-em ball game only because it would depend on what Justin Fields shows up, and this goes back to the point we were talking about earlier. Ohio State's going to have to play light years better against Clemson in the national semifinal than they did against Northwestern. But if they were playing Oklahoma, I'm not so sure that Ohio State would even be the favorite in that ball game in Vegas. And if they were, I would probably say the number could be no more than, 2 or 3. So I really like Oklahoma. They've got a lot of kids coming back for next year. I think that next year, right now, they're going to be an in vogue pick to be a team that is favored to win the Big 12 and be in the college football playoff in 2021.
See, I'm going to play your game here because if we expanded this to 16 teams, A&M and North Carolina, 5-13, Cincinnati and Georgia, 8-9. I mean, to me, those would be classic first-round games in a 16-team college football playoff. And Cincinnati and Georgia, hey, what do we talk about in the first round of the NCAA tournament? We talk about the 15-2s, the 5-13s, the 8-9
gotta have 1
seeds.
5-12.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Then you're talking that, we're talking about in the regions in the NCAA tournament. This is for the college football playoff, and you would have an 8-9 and a 5-13, and that would pique some interest. And I totally get that. But there are reasons why we don't have that expanded playoff right now, which we should probably wait for another podcast, and we have like 2 hours to talk about it for another conversation. But it is cool to think about a Cincinnati-Georgia matchup in the college football playoff, or even Texas A&M and North Carolina, and the implications and how much fun that would be to watch with a lot on the line.
We'll be talking about it in just a few years, John, because remember, this contract runs out in 2024 or 2025. I think it's 2025. So we'll be able to start talking about this thing here in the next couple of years. Now, 16, that's too many, though. That's too many. I'm pro expansion, but not 16. Holy smokes, that'd be too much, I think. But it sure would be fun. Look, I wouldn't argue it if they did do it. But I think 6 or 8 is the answer to all of the NCAA's potential problems right now with attendance and ratings as it is, and FCS teams playing all these SEC clubs and fans complaining about that, and blah, 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 blah. I think you go to 6 or you go to 8 and you solve a lot of these problems.
Chris Mooneyham, what are you doing now? Because you're a busy, busy man. You're the hardest working man in sports television right now.
Well, I'll. You know what? As a matter of fact, I am gonna shamelessly plug here because
do it.
Since you have so many diehard college football fans. If you're listening to this podcast, man, you really love college football. And I'll tell you again, I work for 680 The Fan here in Atlanta, 93.7 FM. You can get the 680 The Fan mobile app, and we are the college football voice of the South, which thereby makes us one of the national leaders in college football. We're going to have many, if not most, of the bowl games on our airwaves. If you want to hear the radio calls. And here's something else of interest to some of your Recruitnik listeners out there who love recruiting. Here in the state of Georgia, remember, one of the great states in the union as far as producing talent that goes on from the high school level to the collegiate level and then on to the pros. You know this, John. You spent many years covering it yourself. We're going to have the Georgia High School Football State Championships coming up on our airwaves, all 8 ball games on December 28th through the 30th. Wall-to-wall coverage, all 8 games over the 3 days. I'll be on the play-by-play of 3 games. We've got an all-star cast and crew. We want to invite you all to listen because I think that you're going to hear a lot of names over that 3-day stretch that you'll be hearing a lot from in the next few years. And then statistically, inevitably, you're going to hear a lot from these guys in the National Football League as well.
That's Chris Mooneyham, 680 The Fan, and we appreciate you being on the College Football X.
Thank you, buddy. Happy holidays.
Much more to come when the College Football X continues after this timeout.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
little edgier version of Deck the Halls as we return to the College Football X. John Wilkerson here with you. Bill Shanks from the Bill Shanks Show on the superstations.com. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast, Bill. It's good to have you back.
It's great to be back, John. Always a pleasure. Always have fun talking to you.
And Merry Christmas, by the way, Bill.
Merry Christmas to you, yes, sir.
Hope you get everything you asked for from Santa Claus. I know one of the things you wanted was Georgia in the college football playoffs. Full disclosure, Bill is a huge Georgia Bulldog fan. That didn't happen, but the Dogs are going to the Peach Bowl to face Cincinnati, which is a team that's probably looking to prove something. But, I think Georgia's probably playing its best football all year right now.
Absolutely. Well, they found the quarterback, John, and I think Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, is probably really disappointed he doesn't have 4 or 5 more games left with the quarterback that he now has and the offense that he now has compared to what he had the first part of the season with Stetson Bennett, Dwan Mathis, which just didn't work. And unfortunately, Vanderbilt couldn't find any other soccer players to fill out their football roster, and they could not play, and they canceled. And then so Georgia only has 1 game left, and it's Cincinnati, the team that obviously has been in the middle of the topic of discussion with college football as an undefeated team, and how they're kind of pushed aside. And Georgia will have to play a very good team. It's got a very good defense that is much like Georgia, from what I've read, as far as how they operate and how they play the game. And Luke Fickell's a very good coach, and it's going to be a great test. I mean, if Georgia loses, people are going to say, well, Cincinnati did belong up there and possibly the Final Four and have more respect. And if Georgia blows them out, then people are going to say, well, they had no business in that discussion. And, so there's all kind of different things that can happen as far as the discussion that's going to be going on with this game. But I'm just glad that if Cincinnati is a very decent team, that's a good competitor for Georgia to play and see how they do offensively. Because with the new quarterback of JT Daniels, John, they've been able to really do some different things. Their offense has been able to work more productively, and I think it's been a very good sign for 2021. And again, it's just a shame they didn't have more opportunities to test out that offense. Even though Vanderbilt was awful, it would have been, some more snaps, just more snaps. And they didn't have that opportunity. But against Cincinnati, which will probably be the best team that JT Daniels has faced, considering he's faced South Carolina and, Missouri and Mississippi State and so forth, and none of those 3 really presented much. Well, Mississippi State did, but that was kind of a fluky thing. And then we didn't really expect Missouri to be that bad, but they were. So anyway, Cincinnati's going to be a good test for this offense, and I can't wait to see what Georgia does.
Yeah, and if we would have had a 16-team playoff, this would be an 8-9 matchup, and and comparing it to the men's basketball tournament, the NCAA men's basketball tournament, 8-9 matchups are always appointment television. You never know how those games are going to fall. And again, I just love this matchup. A program trying to prove itself against a SEC team that's probably playing its best football. But I wanted to touch base with you about the college football playoff because we know who the teams are. And I think when you and I talked back in August, this is probably the 4 teams we kind of expected. Notre Dame may have been kind of on the outside looking in, but we knew the Irish was going to have a good team this year, and they have. So we get the usual suspects: Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. And all I've been hearing about, Bill, is this good for college football to have the same cast of characters every year? And I'm not so sure if it is.
I don't think it is. And I think my takeaway, John, from what happened with the college football playoff committee and the controversy that it seems to be in place every single year is that the group of 5 conferences, number one, need to split off and have their own deal. Because and I know they're included because of the money. Okay, let's be honest. They're included because of the money to some extent, but if they're not going to be rewarded when they have teams like they do that are good and maybe are undefeated and maybe do deserve consideration, because you say, well, okay, well, but do you really think a team like Cincinnati is going to play a team like Alabama to win? I don't think so. But you know what? That's what a tournament's for. And that's why having only 4 is not enough if you're going to say that you're going to include those conferences in your equation. I really hope they'll split off, and I really hope they'll say, we're never going to be able to do this unless they either expand to 8 or more, or they're going to. But even if they expand to 8, there's no guarantee that the group of 5 conferences are going to have more than one representative. They need their tournament, whether it's 4 or 8, and the Power 5 conferences need theirs. And I think we've also seen this year the benefit to the sport of playing more significant games compared to these cash for clunker games that are just not good for football. Now, people may say, well, Bill, they are good for football because these schools get paid, and that helps their athletic departments, and it's going to be even more important moving forward because of the COVID losses. You know what? You have to balance things, and I still believe that the games we've seen this year, the teams that we've seen play each other, even with the BYU Coastal Carolina game, which obviously is not like 2 Power 5 teams, but it was 2 teams that were able to really play kind of on their own level, and look what we saw. I hope this year really produces change in this sport. We don't need those cash for clunker games. We don't. You know what? There needs to be some other type of resolution to find some financial help for these colleges and these conferences that are not on television doing what they do, whether it's a fund that is supported by the Power 5 conferences or something, because the games aren't good. People don't want to go to those cash for clunker games. People don't want to see them on television. The ratings aren't good. You can't tell me they are, compared to Power 5 matchups. And so there's a lot of things that I take away from this year, and I think that the College Football Playoff Committee was a joke. I think there's bias on there. I don't know how you get away from bias. There was a situation 2 years ago where Georgia was in consideration, and we had athletic directors from Georgia Tech and Florida on the committee. Well, how the heck are they going to be? How are they going to be unbiased against Georgia? I just don't believe that, and I don't like some of the things the committee people representatives said on television were moronic. Just things about Ohio State and things about some of the other programs that just didn't add up, John. And I think that's so unfortunate, because look, even in the truncated season that we had, there's been great football, there's been great activity. Has it been a shell game? Yeah, on a weekly, daily, hourly basis to see if teams are going to be able to play, but they're pulling it off here. And I just hope there's things that are learned that moving forward can create change for this sport to make it even better.
Well, if you're an ACC fan, you're happy because even though it's a one-off this year for Notre Dame in the conference, they got 2 teams in. So what a great way for John Swofford to go out as the ACC commissioner than having 2 teams in the college football playoff. But then when you look at it on paper, the semifinal matchup, it just looks like another collision between Alabama and Clemson. It'll be their 5th meeting, their 4th in the title game. Both Alabama and Clemson, they get the best 5 stars, and we all know why. They've got charismatic coaches, and they have brand names, and you could lump Ohio State in there as well. And these are the 4 teams, Bill, that are going to drive the TV ratings. And I always say that whoever drives the TV ratings is going to get into the college football playoff. And these are the 4 teams that are going to push the ratings up in a year where TV ratings have been significantly down in college football.
No doubt, and that's why they're playing. That's why they're there. And look, there's part of the, I think, discussion where people are saying, do we really need more than 2 this year? Because, John, I want to see Alabama play Clemson. I do. I hope they. I was pulling for Notre Dame the other day, but I wasn't, because I kept on saying, why are you pulling for Notre Dame? Because you want Clemson and Alabama to play, and the best way for that to happen is for Clemson to win the ball game. So Clemson and Alabama play. But again, that's what a tournament's all about. That if those are the 2 best teams, they're going to play. They're going to find a way to play. Whether it's 1 versus 4, or 1 versus 2, whatever, and whether it's a 4-team or 8-team playoff format, you're going to be able to have that situation occur. And so, anyway, I think Alabama and Clemson are the 2 best teams. I think they're going to win these games. The Clemson-Ohio State game will be interesting, because obviously we will have Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence. It will be Trevor versus Justin, 1 versus 2 probably in the NFL draft, probably. I know Jacksonville's going to take Trevor, that's for sure, but we'll see where Justin winds up. And there's no doubt it's going to be a compelling television, and that's what they wanted. They didn't want Cincinnati or somebody else in that mix by any means. They didn't want Texas A&M in there.
Right.
But we're always going to have discussion about a Texas A&M until we get an 8-team format. We're always going to have it. I think, we may still have it if we have an 8-team format where the 9th team's like, well, we're getting screwed. Okay, well, you're always going to have that. You can have a 16-team format, the 17th team's going to scream, well, we're getting screwed. But when you have a 1-loss team like a Texas A&M making the case, whether we believe that they are better than Notre Dame or not, they got beat by Alabama and Notre Dame got beat by Clemson. So, let them 2 play, right? Let them 2 play to see who's better. But we're always going to have this argument. We're always going to have an argument about a team being left out or a conference being left out that cannot prove that they're part of the mix. It's going to be like a basketball tournament if we ever have an expanded situation where occasionally maybe a 8 beats a 1 or a 7 beats a 2 or a 6 beats a 3. But this is always going to happen. And, are these the 4 best teams? Well, look, I think we know Alabama and Clemson are. The Ohio State argument, I know it's rough because of the number of games that they played. I understand that. They're a very good team. They proved that against Northwestern. There's no doubt about it. They're very good. He's a very good coach. Justin's a very good player. They've got a star player. They got good players. And I think Notre Dame is one of the 4 best teams. I do. I picked them over Texas A&M because I think even though they did not play well the other day against Clemson, and obviously there was a difference with Trevor Lawrence in the game, and you could say that if Trevor had played the first game, they wouldn't have been undefeated going into the championship game in the first place. They were a very good team this year. They had a very good defense. Look what they did in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago, the week before North Carolina turned around and hung about 600 rushing yards on Miami. Yeah. Notre Dame shut those 2 kids down. So I'm okay with the Final Four, and I didn't really buy the Texas A&M love. I didn't buy what Jimbo was saying, to be honest with you. But I still think we've got 2 great teams and 2 others that hopefully will present at least some challenge to those teams in the semifinal games.
We're talking to Bill Shanks from the Bill Shanks Show on the superstations.com. And, this year, let's just face it, Bill, we're lucky that we had a college football season with everything going on with COVID and that situation. And what we had was some really good feel-good stories that came out of this season. The things I think about this year are how the Sun Belt Conference took advantage of getting some national exposure, especially that first weekend, going 3-0 against the Big 12, and then you couple that with Coastal Carolina having an undefeated season, and then you brought up the BYU Coastal Carolina game that was slapped together in 3 days, and requiring the Cougars to travel 2,000 miles to play the game in Myrtle Beach. And then there's Iowa State playing for their first conference title in 108 years, and just so many great stories out there in college football. What are some that piqued your interest?
Well, I'm going to stick in the SEC and go with 2 quarterbacks who I think deserve tremendous recognition. They'll probably get that when they're invited to participate in the Heisman situation, and that's Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. Mac Jones, back earlier in the year, people didn't even know if he'd be the quarterback. They were thinking Bryce Young was going to be a possibility to come in here as a true freshman and be the guy. And Mac Jones, I just overwhelmed with how well he's played. Whether it's Steve Sarkisian or I know he's got great receivers or whatever, but this guy is accurate. He's more than a game manager. He's not a Greg McElroy. He's not A.J. McCarron. He's good. He's really good. And he's proved that this year. And then Kyle Trask, look, I was a skeptic, and maybe because I'm a Georgia fan, I'm always skeptical of anything that happens to Florida. But, look, that kid, what a year he had, and proved. And is that Dan Mullen? Is that Kyle Pitts? What is it that's made him that good? But he's had a great year. He showed that in the championship game. I mean, Kyle Trask kept them in that game against Alabama to the very end. And I don't think people thought that was going to happen going in, where they'd be, part of the Heisman discussion. I think a wide receiver is going to win it. That's a pretty good story in itself, isn't it? Devontae Smith, who, by the way, Georgia fans refer to as Lucifer John because of his little trick on 2nd and 26 a couple of years ago in the championship game. But I think those 2 quarterbacks, were really good. I think Sam Pittman, your coach for your Arkansas Razorbacks, is a good feel-good story. I mean, Arkansas was circling the drain a year ago. They had a bad hire, obviously, and then they turn around and they get someone who people are like, Sam Pittman, he's an offensive line coach, and they played their hearts out for that guy, and they should have won more than they did. But they had a good year, and they had a good stepping stone to getting back to respectability behind a guy who they're going to love there. I mean, Sam Pittman, I didn't have the opportunity to interview him while he was at Georgia, but I was around one time before the championship game a few years ago, when kind of a little scrum when he was talking, and I decided to keep my mouth shut and listen, and just really, and I enjoyed listening to him tremendously. He's a very impressive guy with how he knows football and the offensive line, and I think it showed this year that offensive line coaches can be a head coach, and I think it's about him. I think it's him. I think people just gravitate toward him and really respond to him well, and Arkansas showed that. So that, I'm kissing up to you with that selection right there because you're a Razorback.
Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with that as well. Arkansas, hey, they're going to a bowl game this year, which is great, going to the Texas Bowl. And, another feel-good story along those lines is San Jose State going undefeated and winning the Mountain West Championship. Yep. And their starting quarterback was Arkansas' starting quarterback last year, Nick Starkel. So it kind of comes around, doesn't it? Bill, tell the masses where they can hear you.
Well, by the way, Felipe Franks, too, should be in that conversation,
exactly.
John, because I laughed at that and thought, Felipe Franks going to Arkansas, and boy, what a year he had, right? I mean, and you know what? The transfer portal is, real quick, I'm sorry to extend this here, but I mean, the transfer portal is a huge storyline here moving forward for this sport. I mean, we laughed and joked about free agency when the transfer portal, we even learned what the heck the transfer portal was. Well, there's going to be more hot stove league action in college football than there is in professional baseball this year with what's going to go on with this transfer portal. And it's like, I was joking with someone the other day. We were trying to figure out Georgia's numbers. I'm like, well, they better be 3 or 4 short because they're going to want to get some free agents from the free agent market, and that's the transfer portal. And, hey, Felipe Franks really saved Arkansas. They would not have, not to take anything away from Sam, but Felipe Franks was a really good pickup in that free agent market last year. All right, thesuperstations.com, the Bill Shank Show, every afternoon from 3 until 7, and we hope you'll join us, especially on Tuesdays at 4:25 when we have the great John Wilkerson come join us.
Yes, that'll bring the masses in, and I think free agency works better in college football than it does in the NFL, especially the quarterback position. Bill, I appreciate your time and being on the College Football X, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, John. Thank you.
All right, when we come back, Jon Nelson with whatever he has. We'll see. College Football X continues after this timeout.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football. Now, back to the College Football X.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB, the College Football X. And since Wilkie decided this week that it was going to be pretty much just family-based, meaning folks that have appeared on the show multiple times, I took the word family literally. So to discuss the Auburn coaching search and the apparent solution, it's the boss. It's my wife, the alumna of Auburn itself. So Bryan Harsin, Pats, what do you think?
I don't know a whole lot about him. I am the first to say he's going to have to learn different shades of orange and blue. Please, God, don't let us wind up with a navy blue field and Jordan hair, because that'd be the worst thing ever. But everything I've seen about him thus far, I like. I like the fact that he is supposedly a quarterback developer, which we desperately need. I'm going to be curious to see who he retains from the current staff. I am cautiously optimistic by what tweets I have seen coming out from players and new commits and recruits. So we'll see. I don't know how all this is going to translate to the SEC, but apparently his teams have really strong defenses as well, so we'll see.
All right, and I know that a lot of folks, and full disclosure, the group of alumna and alumni that you hang out with and that I hang out with, and I'm as an all-in-law,
yes,
you guys were having rather spirited discussions leading up to the hiring of Bryan Harsin, and it was spirited in like, oh God, please don't let it be this person, and this person, as each of these names was being discussed. Break down the stereotype for me, because a lot of folks will sit there and go, "Oh, girls, they don't know anything about football." But this is the SEC.
Yeah, this is the SEC where there's a T-shirt saying that says, "She was such a nice Southern lady," and then football season started, which basically, as you know, does describe me and my girlfriends. But no, our little group of girls who all went to Auburn, there are 6 of us. Two poor guys who are in there with us, who put up with us, but they're as rabid a group of football fans as you will ever see or hear from. So any Auburn game, especially this year when we have not all been able to be at the games physically, we're running up 50 to 100 texts per game on every single thing. Well, obviously this coaching search did the exact same thing. So people hearing this rumor, people hearing that rumor, please God, we don't want Hugh Freeze representing our school. We don't want that. I'm trying to think of some of the others that we were just adamantly opposed to. That was the main one, was Hugh Freeze.
Oh, but then the Bill Clark thing came up too.
Oh, yeah, then the Bill Clark thing came up, which I would not have objected to Bill Clark or to Neil Brown, but the thing is, we could have got him 3 years ago.
For a lot less money.
For a lot less money and without having a new contract for Gus Malzahn, so they should have thought about that then. But today, it has now come out that Bill Clark actually contacted Auburn. Auburn did not contact him, so that was a tad overblown. I don't know if they actually spoke to Hugh Freeze. I'm not sure about that. According to the articles that I've been reading, that Harsin apparently really was very impressive in his interview as to where he wanted to take the program, and that was what sealed it for him. That it actually was a true search.
Well, and then the whole discussion about all the behind-the-scenes black helicopter stuff, too, was also out there, too, that you guys are going after.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I wish I could say, oh, that's just a bunch of hooey. I know our boosters, and I know the reputation of our school, and I know the way that things have always been done at Auburn. So I would not dismiss it out of hand and say, oh, no, there's no way that our coaches went behind Gus Malzahn's back. I'm sure there's every way that's possible, just because I know our boosters tend to have a lot more money than they have since, and have in the past participated in such lovely experiences as Jetgate, when they tried to get rid of Tommy Tuberville and replace him with Bobby Petrino without even notifying Tuberville of that. So I fully believe there probably is a little bit of truth in that. It's going to be interesting to see if the coaches that have been mentioned in that particular issue, if they are retained or what's going to happen with them. I mean, I hope they are. They're both excellent coaches and great recruiters. So who knows? I mean, the good thing, though, is it does sound like the boosters that were involved in that particular story were not involved in the hire of this particular coach. So that's good. That's good.
How many years did Gus Malzahn stay to past his welcome date?
What was the year we went to the national championship? His first?
Yeah.
So what, 6? No. We've had such a roller coaster ride with him.
Because it was like, okay, we think he's going to get fired, and then he'll win that game.
Yeah.
Whatever that game is.
Yeah.
And then he's okay, and then everything's fine. And then it's problems again, and then, I don't know, and then he'll win that game, whatever that game is, and he stays.
Well, exactly. And usually, as you know, that game happens to be the one at the end of the season.
Right. Not the bowl game.
No, not the bowl game. It's the one there where all is forgiven if you beat Alabama. So he has a remarkable record of success being able to do that, which has bought him a lot of leverage. And I mean, and he's a good guy. He is a good guy, and I think he had a good reputation around the town, around the community. Auburn is not a big place, and that helped as well. But you just kept feeling there was, and again, when you go to the national championship game in your first year as a head coach, you kind of set some impossible expectations. But I think people finally just got tired of it being such a roller coaster. The highs are really high, but the lows are really low. There wasn't really anything in between. And I hate to say it, but, down the road, you've got somebody that's just always way, way up there. There is no variation unless it's really, really unusual. So while that's the standard everybody else is trying to reach, for us it's in our home state and it's our main rival. And that's hard. So, and there are some people who I think are unreasonable and think that we're supposed to be exactly that, and we're not.
And then the whole new contract extension and the lack of discussions and just getting it rubber stamped. And
yeah, we had at the time the president of the university, which is why he is no longer the president of the university, apparently he had quite the high opinion of himself as a deal maker, and am I allowed to say he was a big jock sniffer?
Sure.
Okay, he was, and thought that he should be over everything that had to do with athletics. So he basically just agreed to this contract on his own, which now that can't happen. Now you have to get contract extensions of that particular monetary magnitude, must be approved by the Board of Trustees. But he basically went out there and just said, yeah, I've got the power to do that, so I'm gonna, because I know more than any of you. Yeah, again, which is why he's no longer the president of Auburn University.
My wife, Patty, is my guest this week here on the OSG on CFB, the College Football X, talking about the Auburn coaching search/solution. Bryan Harsin heading to the Plains here after the 2020 season. So when you look at the 2020 season, how would you personify it?
I have absolutely nothing. Oh, you're saying 2020, not 2021.
Yeah,
Sorry, my bad.
My
bad.
This season that you still have a bowl game where you're playing another mid-level B1G school.
Yes, in the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah.
Again. This is a hard year to figure out, again, because you didn't have a spring training. You were trying to install a new offense, which, according to people who know football, that his offense is pretty difficult to pick up. And when you don't have a spring and you have a very limited fall practice, that was hard. So I think people had very unrealistic expectations. I think when all you are playing is conference games as opposed to your, divisional Michigan schools and stuff like that, it's hard to ascertain too, because you don't have a couple of games to kind of get up to speed. When Georgia is your second game, that there's no Southwest Louisiana in the mix there or anything like that.
No.
So it's, again, I guess the greatest thing I would say about the 2020 season was it was so very inconsistent. Just when you thought they had figured it out by the LSU game, the very next game they come back and just get waxed. So it was hard to figure out. You almost feel like it was a lost season, and there is nothing to be taken from it because it was so unique and it was so bizarre.
But you look at folks like Anthony Schwartz. You look at Tank Bigsby coming in as a true freshman.
That would be SEC Freshman of the Year, Tank Bigsby. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, this new coach is going to come in, and there's a lot of talent already on board. And I think there's some pretty good talent that they signed as well. You had a new offensive line. I think it was only the third game or so that they had the same five in the starting rotation. You've got Schwartz, you've got Tank Bigsby, who is such a bright spot. You've got a couple of the other running backs that are coming back. You've got the core of that defense is coming back, and they were a bright spot too. So I think there's some good things coming on the horizon, and we saw some good things and some new faces. You know, again, as you and I talked in many games, as you're trying to talk me off a ledge. We were very spoiled by the fact that you had that bad man Derek Brown and you had Marlon Davidson on your line for 2 years and terrorizing offensive lines. So when all of a sudden you've got a new defensive line, they're young, they're talented, but they're young. And we never really had to rely a whole lot on our safeties before because, you know, they wouldn't get past those two big crazy men. And so, but it was, you know, there's some stuff to work on.
And you're going to be looking at it with a bowl game in Central Florida against a team from the B1G that will run the ball all day long, I guess.
Probably. Well, against our defense, yeah, they probably will. Our run defense, not so great.
So, that's bowl season. That is Auburn. That is the Auburn Coaching Search. That's the Auburn Coaching Solution with my wife, Patty, the alumna, who gets to deal with this on a daily basis and gets to talk to me about it. So, thanks for doing the Christmas show.
Hey, anytime.
OSG on CFB, the X continues after this.
Like the voice you're hearing on this podcast? It could be on your production, too. Just go to goodpipesvo.com. That's goodpipesvo.com and reach out to Steve Henderson on the Contact Us page. Go to the website, click on the Contact Us page, and then see what Steve's Good Pipes can do for your upcoming project.
A little jazzy version of Jingle Bells here on the College Football X. John Wilkerson here with you. Just heard Jon Nelson and his wife Patty talking about the head coaching hire at Auburn, with Bryan Harsin becoming the new head coach of the Tigers, going from one orange and blue to another orange and blue. And so since John has declared this family show, or the family day on the College Football X, I brought on my middle child, my oldest daughter, Amanda Wilkerson, who's very much a sports fan herself. What do you think about Bryan Harsin going to Auburn?
I like it. Does that mean Gus Malzahn is going to Boise State?
Well, he might be on the list, but I would think Kellen Moore would be the first phone call they would make for the head coaching search. He's a former quarterback. He's the offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. And he's a former quarterback at Boise State, and of course, he was on Jason Garrett's staff at Dallas, and he was retained when the new coaching staff came in. So, I would think that would be the first phone call they would make, would be to Kellen Moore.
By the way, Dad, Arizona hired Judd Fish as the Wildcats head coach. Good choice?
It's an interesting choice. He comes off Bill Belichick's staff at the New England Patriots. I don't know. I mean, is he ready for a head coach? And that's a loyal fan base, a rabid fan base in Tucson. And I just wonder how it's playing in Tucson right now. That's kind of one of those hires you just didn't expect. By the way, Amanda, who's your favorite college football team?
Arkansas Razorbacks.
Can you give me a Woo Pig Suey?
Woo Pig Zooey.
And Amanda's getting ready for the Texas Bowl when Arkansas and TCU play in about a week. You ready for that?
Yep.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed the College Football X this week. I want to thank our guests, Bill Shanks, Chris Mooningham, and, of course, the lovely Patty Nelson joining the show this week. So, for Jon Nelson, I'm John Wilkerson. So long, everybody, and enjoy the games, the bowl games, this weekend.
Thanks for listening to the College Football X. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.